I should have ignored it. Hell, I should have called the cops and claimed harassment. After all, the last time we'd spoken, he'd shattered me into pieces too jagged to glue back together. But my feet moved on their own, traitorous as ever. And there he was, Alex Rivera, soaked to the bone, his dark curls plastered to his forehead. Those hazel eyes I'd once drowned in now shadowed with something that looked a lot like regret. "You look like shit," I muttered, the words tasting like ash, even as my pulse thundered in my ears. He laughed, a broken sound that twisted the knife deeper. "Yeah, well, you look like you've been waiting for this. And God help me, he wasn't wrong." That knock wasn't the beginning. No, our story started 3 years earlier, back when the world was a blur of cheap beer and bad decisions at NYU, where the air always smelled like street vendor falafel and unwashed ambition. I was Carter Hayes, 25 and cocky as hell, a film major with a chip on my shoulder the size of the Hudson River. Grew up in a sleepy Ohio suburb where being gay meant whispers behind your back and football games you watched from the bleachers, nursing crushes on the quarterbacks who'd never looked twice. New York was my escape hatch, big, brutal, and beautiful enough to swallow secrets whole. Alex was the thorn in my side from day one. He crashed into my life during freshman orientation, all swagger and sharp edges. A poli-sci was from the Bronx with a mouth that could cut glass. We were thrown together in a group project on urban decay. Ironic, considering how we'd end up decaying each other. First meeting in some dingy coffee shop off Washington Square, he took one look at my pitch, a gritty short film on forgotten immigrant stories, and sneered. "That's some white boy savior bullshit, Hayes. You think slapping a filter on poverty makes it art?" I fired back without missing a beat. "Better than your TED Talk drivel about systemic reform, while you sip lattes in your trust fund loft. At least my work gets dirty." The room went dead quiet, our classmates shifting like they were watching a cage match. From there, it was war. Stolen scripts from my locker, his posters vandalized with my Sharpadoodles, endless Twitter beefs that racked up hundreds of likes from our mutual masochists. He called me Golden Boy like it was a curse. I dubbed him Bronx Bomber for the way he'd explode in debates, leaving scorched earth. But hate's a funny thing. It simmers, turns to steam, builds pressure until something's gotta give. Ours gave during a late-night screening in the film department basement, the kind of dive where the projector flickered like a dying heartbeat and the seats smelled like old popcorn and regret. We'd been forced into truce mode for a class festival, co-directing a 10-minute short on rivalry turning to respect. Bullshit premise, I thought, until the power cut out mid-scene, plunging us into black. In the dark, his breath ghosted my neck as we fumbled for flashlights. "Hayes, you gonna cry now? Big bad film's over." His voice was low, teasing, but there was an edge to it, something hungry. I turned, our faces inches apart, the glow from my phone's screen carving shadows across his cheekbones. "Shut up, Rivera," I whispered, but it came out wrong, breathy, like an invitation. And then he did shut me up, his mouth crashing into mine like a subway train off the rails. Fierce, demanding, tasting of black coffee and unspoken fury. We broke apart gasping, the lights flickering back on like a cruel joke. "What the fuck was that?" I demanded, my heart slamming against my ribs. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, eyes wild. "Call it research for the enemies to lovers trope you love so much." But we both knew it was more. That night, we didn't finish the edit. Instead, we stumbled back to my cramped dorm off campus, hands everywhere, tearing at clothes like they were the last barriers between us and whatever this madness was. Sex with Alex was apocalypse-level intense. Bodies slick with sweat, nails digging into skin, his growls in my ear mixing Spanish curses with my name like a prayer. We'd fuck against the wall, on the fire escape under the sodium glow of street lamps, whispering taunts that dissolved into pleas. "You hate me so much, huh?" he'd murmur, thrusting deep, his fingers laced through mine. "Yeah," I'd gasp, arching into him. But not like this. It was raw, unfiltered, the kind of passion that leaves bruises you wear like badges. By sophomore year, the hate had morphed into something fiercer. Obsession. We'd sneak into rooftop parties in Williamsburg, his hand possessive on my thigh under the table, my head on his shoulder during indie flicks at the Angelica. He dragged me to bodegas at 3 a.m. for empanadas, teaching me to swear in Spanglish. I pulled him into midnight screenings of old noirs, where we'd make out in the back row until the usher kicked us out. "You're ruining me, Hayes," he'd say, tracing the freckles on my chest with lazy fingers, the city skyline glittering beyond my window like it was cheering us on. But love in New York isn't a fairy tale. It's a lease with fine print you ignore until eviction day. Ours came crashing down during finals week, when stress turned us into powder kegs. I was buried in edits for my thesis film, a semi-autobiographical piece about a queer kid fleeing the Midwest, raw nerves exposed on celluloid. Alex, buried in his own grind for a fellowship, started pulling away. Late nights at the library bleeding into dawn, texts going unanswered. "It's nothing," he'd say, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just the grind." I didn't buy it, but I let it slide until the night I found the email. We'd crashed at his place. A walk-up in Bushwick with peeling wallpaper and a view of the L train rumbling by like a mechanical heartbeat. He was in the shower, steam curling under the door, when my laptop pinged on the kitchen counter. Curiosity's a bitch. I glanced, and there it was. A chain from his advisor, CC'd to some big-shot producer at Tribeca Films. "Alex, your pitch on grassroots activism in the Bronx is gold. But lose the personal angle. Investors want policy, not pillow talk. Ditch the boyfriend subplot. Makes it too niche. Boyfriend subplot. That's what I was to him, a footnote in his rise." The shower shut off, and he emerged in a towel, water dripping from his curls, oblivious until he saw my face. "Carter? What's wrong?" I shoved the laptop at him, the screen glowing like an accusation. "Niche? That's me you're talking about eradicating from your precious script. Was I ever more than a plot device to you?" His eyes widened, then narrowed. "It's not like that. The fellowship's competitive. Competitive enough to sell me out?" My voice cracked, the hurt spilling over like ink on wet paper. We screamed then, words flying like shrapnel. My insecurities about being just some white kid from nowhere. His frustrations with my self-indulgent art mirroring his own hidden fears. It peaked when he grabbed my arm, too hard, in the heat of it, and I shoved him back, hard enough that he hit the wall. "Get out," he snarled, chest heaving. "If that's what you think I am." I left instead, storming into the night, the June humidity clinging like guilt. That was the end of us as lovers. The next day, he won the fellowship. I heard through the grapevine, a mutual friend texting condolences disguised as gossip. He moved to D.C. for an internship that turned permanent, chasing policy dreams in marble halls. I graduated, scraped by with freelance gigs editing indie docs, crashing on couches until I landed the shoebox in Bed-Stuy. Close enough to the action but far from the ghosts. We became strangers overnight, unfollowed on every platform, numbers deleted like bad code. I'd catch glimpses of him in feeds before the purge. Him at galas, arm around some suited-up politico, that easy smile I'd once thought was mine. It stung, but I armored up. Hookups and dive bars, one-night stands that left me emptier than before. "You're better off," my therapist said. A no-nonsense dyke from Queens with a Yankees mug on her desk. He was poison, maybe, but poison lingers in the blood. 2 years blurred by in a haze of rejection letters and ramen-fueled all-nighters. My big break came unexpectedly. A short film I directed on queer invisibility in the Heartland got picked up by Outfest. Whispers of Sundance was following like a promise. I was finally clawing my way up, proving I didn't need his validation. Until that rainy Tuesday in November, when the knock came. He stood there now, dripping on my welcome mat. Ironic, since I'd never welcomed anyone fully since him. "Can I come in?" His voice was softer than I remembered, stripped of the bravado. I stepped aside, the door creaking like a confession. The apartment was a mess. Takeout containers on the coffee table, my latest script scattered like confetti from a failed party. He took it in, then me, older, leaner, the lines around my eyes deeper from too many sleepless nights. "Coffee? Or whiskey?" I asked, aiming for casual, but it landed brittle. He shook his head, peeling off his soaked jacket, revealing a faded Ramones tee that smelled like him, citrus and smoke. "Carter, I saw your film, the one at Outfest. It wrecked me. Wrecked him." The word hung there, heavy as the thunder rolling over the East River. I crossed my arms, leaning against the kitchenette counter. "Good. That's the point. Now what? You fly in from DC to pat me on the back before jetting back to your power lunches. He winced, running a hand through his wet hair. No. I quit. Last month. The whole thing, lobbying, schmoozing donors who don't give a shit about real change. It was eating me alive. And you were right. I sold out. Not just the script. Us. The admission landed like a gut punch, stealing my breath. I'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in my head, him groveling, me slamming the door. But here, with rain streaking the windows and his eyes pleading, all I felt was the old ache flaring back to life. Why now? I whispered, hating how small I sounded. 2 years, Alex. You could have called, emailed, anything. Because I was scared. He stepped closer, close enough that I could see the freckles across his nose. The ones I'd kissed under summer stars. Scared you'd moved on. Scared I'd ruined the best thing I ever had. But watching that film, seeing your face up there, raw and real, it hit me. I don't want to be strangers anymore. My laugh was bitter, echoing off the exposed brick. We were enemies first, remember? Then lovers. Then nothing. What makes you think we can just rewrite the ending? He reached for my hand, tentative, his fingers warm against my cold skin. Because endings aren't set in stone. Not in New York. Not with us. His thumb traced my knuckles, a ghost of old intimacies, and damn if my resolve didn't crack just a little. We talked then, really talked, for the first time since the screaming match. He spilled it all. The DC grind hollowing him out, nights staring at the ceiling wishing for my sarcasm, the parade of dates that tasted like cardboard because they weren't me. I thought success would fill the hole you left, he said, voice thick. But it just made it bigger. I confess too. The hookups that left me chasing shadows. The scripts where every hero betrayed the love interest because that's all I knew how to write anymore. You broke me, Alex. Made me believe love's just a setup for the fall. By midnight, the rain had eased to a drizzle, the city lights smearing like watercolor on the glass. We were on the couch, knees touching, the space between us electric with possibility and peril. What now? I asked, echoing his earlier plea. He leaned in, forehead to mine, breath mingling. We start over. Slow. No scripts, no expectations. Just us. His lips brushed my temple, soft as a question, and I didn't pull away. Instead, I turned, capturing his mouth in a kiss that was tentative at first, testing, tasting the years apart, then deepening into something fierce, forgiving. His hands framed my face, thumbs wiping away tears I hadn't realized were falling, and for a moment, the world narrowed to this. 2 broken men piecing themselves back together, 1 heartbeat at a time. But trust isn't rebuilt in a night. The next morning, sunlight slanting through the blinds, he brewed coffee in my chipped mugs, humming an old Bad Bunny track that made me smile despite myself. We walked the promenade along the East River, hands brushing accidentally on purpose, talking dreams instead of demons. He was staying, crashing on my couch, he said, until he found a freelance gig in the city. No pressure, he'd insist, but his eyes said otherwise. Weeks blurred into a fragile rhythm. Mornings tangled in sheets we swore we'd avoid. Afternoons at indie coffee shops where he'd critique my latest scene with that old fire. Evenings wandering the village, stealing kisses in alleyways like thieves. It felt like the early days, but wiser, scarred, but stronger. He'd cook arroz con pollo from his abuela's recipe, feeding me bites with a grin that lit up the room. I'd drag him to poetry slams in the Bowery, where we'd heckle the bad ones and applaud the ones that hit too close to home. Yet the shadows lingered. A call from DC, an old colleague offering him a dream role, would send him brooding into silence. I'd catch him scrolling my IMDb page, pride warring with envy in his gaze. "You're killing it, Carter," he'd say. But the words carried an undercurrent of what-ifs. And me? I'd wake from nightmares of that email, shoving him away in my sleep, only to find him holding on tighter. The real test came in December, when Sundance invited my film for a spotlight slot. Champagne dreams, right? Until the producer attached, a slick Hollywood type named Jordan, all teeth and tailored suits, started sniffing around Alex too, dangling producing credits on diversity projects. We were at a holiday mixer in Chelsea, fairy lights twinkling like false promises, when Jordan cornered us by the bar. "Carter, your story's got heart. Add some edge, maybe a betrayal arc?" Alex here could consult. You'll go way back, yeah. Alex's jaw tightened, his hand squeezing mine under the table. We're good, thanks. Carter's vision stands alone. But later, in the cab home, the doubt crept in. What if he's right? What if toning it down gets you the distribution deal? I pulled away, the leather seat cold between us. Toning down? Like you did with us? No, this is my truth, Alex. Take it or leave, he finished, eyes flashing. Is that what you think I'd do? Run at the first sign of real stakes? The fight spilled out like it always did. Accusations flying, old wounds reopening. You left once? I shouted, voice echoing in the empty street outside my building. What's stopping you now? He stormed off into the snow-dusted night, hailed a cab, gone before I could swallow my pride. Days turned to a week of radio silence, my phone a brick in my pocket. Sundance loomed, but the spark was gone. Scenes I'd loved now felt flat, fraudulent. Then, on Christmas Eve, another knock, soft this time, hesitant. I opened the door to find him on the stoop, cheeks flushed from the cold, holding a battered copy of my thesis script, annotated in his scrawled red pen. I read it again, he said, thrusting it forward like a peace offering. Every note, every change I suggested back then, it was fear, Carter. Fear you'd outshine me, that loving you meant losing myself. But I was wrong. You're the edge I've always needed. I took the script, pages crinkling under my fingers, his handwriting a map of our history. And now, with the film, the offers, what if it pulls us apart again? He stepped inside, cupping my face, snowflakes melting on his lashes. Then we fight for it, together, no more strangers. His kiss was salt and pine, desperate and devoted, and I let it anchor me, let it chase the chill away. The rest of the winter was amending. Him tagging along to Sundance, where my film screened to tears and applause, his hand in mine during the Q&A as I dedicated it, to the ones who break you open. Back in the city, we built something sturdier. A shared lease on a one-bedroom in Crown Heights, walls lined with our joint projects. His policy zines, my storyboards. There were still storms, arguments over whose turn it was to do dishes, nights when his ambition clashed with my artist's whims. But we learned the dance. Yell, then yield, touch to temper the tempest. Spring brought Bloom, a queer film fest where we co-presented a panel on rivalry in love and art, the crowd eating up our banter like it was scripted. He landed a gig consulting for a nonprofit on immigrant rights, the kind of work that lit him up without the sellout shine. I sold a feature script, the check buying us a weekend in the Catskills, hiking trails by day, tangled sheets by night, whispering futures under star-pricked skies. But life, that American beast, doesn't hand out happy endings without a claw mark or two. Summer hit with a vengeance. Heat waves baking the asphalt, my rising star drawing vultures. An agent from LA wined and dined me, hints of a series deal dangling like bait. Alex watched from the sidelines, supportive but strained, his own career plateauing in grant rejections. Go for it, he'd say, forcing enthusiasm. West Coast's where the magic happens. One sweltering August night, after a rooftop party in Soho where producers fawned over me like I was the next big thing, we tumbled into bed half-drunk on Rose and Ego. His touches were urgent, possessive, but his eyes held a storm. You're leaving me behind, aren't you? He murmured against my skin, voice muffled in the hollow of my throat. I propped up on an elbow, the ceiling fan whirring lazy circles above. It's not like that. We'd make it work. FaceTime visits, like those couples in the movies. He pulled away, sitting up, the sheet pooling around his waist like a truce flag gone wrong. Movies? This is us, Carter. Real life. You'd be in some glossy hills mansion, surrounded by boys who look like they stepped out of your fantasies, while I'm hustling for scraps here. The words ignited the fuse. So what? You want me to tank my career for your insecurities? We've come too far for this jealousy bullshit. Jealousy? He barked a laugh bitter as black coffee. Call it what it is, fear. Fear you'll wake up one day and realize I'm the small-town holdover, the Bronx kid who can't keep up. He grabbed his jeans from the floor, yanking them on with jerky motions. I won't be your anchor, dragging you down. Alex, wait. But he was already at the door, keys jingling like accusations. I love you, I called, the words choking out. But if you walk, don't come back. He paused, hand on the knob, back to me. That's the problem. I always come back. Then he was gone, the slam echoing like finality. He didn't call, didn't text. I threw myself into prep for the LA move, packing boxes in my apartment that suddenly felt cavernous, pitching ideas over Zoom with a smile that felt painted on. The city, once our playground, turned indifferent. Subways rattling past without him, coffee shops echoing with ghosts of our laughs. Friends staged interventions. He's toxic, Carter. Cut the cord. But their words bounced off the hollow in my chest. October rolled in crisp and cruel, leaves skittering like unanswered prayers along the avenues. I was on a red-eye to LAX, script revisions clutched like a shield, when the flight attendant announced a delay. Grounded in JFK, I wandered the terminal, numb, until my phone buzzed, a voicemail from an unknown number. Carter, it's me. I'm at your place, or what's left of it. The super let me in, saw the boxes. I get it now. You were right. I was scared. But losing you? That's the real terror. Pause, his breath hitching. I don't want to be strangers again. Come home, please. The plea cracked me open. Right there amid the fluorescent hum and harried travelers. Home. Not LA's promise, but Brooklyn's bite. The brownstone, the bodega cat, him waiting with that lopsided grin. I hailed a cab instead of boarding the plane, the skyline unfolding like forgiveness as we crossed the bridge. He was on the stoop when I arrived, huddled in a hoodie against the chill, a six-pack of our old standby IPA sweating on the steps. You came back, he said, standing, voice thick with wonder. I dropped my bag, pulling him into a hug that smelled of rain and redemption. Knocked on my door in my head 1,000 times on that flight. Figured it was time to answer. We didn't make love that night. Just sat on the fire escape, beers clinking, unraveling the knots. LA can wait, I said, lacing our fingers. Or we go together, write our own script. He kissed my knuckles, eyes shining. Enemies to lovers to partners. Sounds like a sequel worth making. And in the city that never sleeps, under a canopy of stars smudged by light pollution, we did. Not perfect, not without scars, but human, flawed, fierce, and finally, fully ours. The knock that started it all? It echoed on, a rhythm we danced to, one step, one fight, one dawn at a time.